The morning sun stretched its way across the tall glass windows of Riverside General Hospital, splashing golden light onto clean white floors. The scent of coffee mixed with disinfectant filled the air. It was the kind of place that never truly slept, a constant rhythm of voices, footsteps, and the beeping of machines. Doctors hurried from one room to another. Nurses called out names. The reception phones never stopped ringing. At the far end of the lobby, Dr. Thomas Caldwell adjusted the collar of his white coat and glanced at his reflection in the window. His face was calm and sharp, the face of a man who had spent years building a reputation of perfection. He prided himself on order, efficiency, and control, but lately something inside him had shifted. There was a kind of hardness that had replaced the compassion he once had. Maybe it was the long hours. Maybe it was disappointment in a world that didn't seem to care about people trying to help. He took a sip of coffee and looked toward the waiting area, already full of patients. To him, they weren't people anymore, just cases, charts, and time slots. And then, among the crowd, he saw him. Near the sliding doors sat a man who didn't seem to belong. His clothes were worn and stained, his hair unwashed, and his eyes, though tired, held a strange kind of gentleness. He hugged an old backpack close to his chest, as if protecting something valuable. People sitting nearby quietly shifted away. Some looked at him with pity, others with judgment. The hospital air, already cold, seemed to grow colder around him. The man's name was Eli, though nobody there knew that yet. He had been walking for hours, every step slower than the last. His body ached. His breathing was shallow. The pain in his chest had grown worse overnight, and now each breath felt like a knife twisting in his ribs. He looked around uncertainly, eyes darting between the nurses and the doctors. Finally, summoning what little courage he had left, he pushed himself up and shuffled to the front desk. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice rough and tired. "I need to see a doctor. My chest hurts. I think something's wrong." The receptionist looked startled. Her eyes flickered to his clothes, then to the clipboard in front of her. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" He shook his head weakly. "No, I just need help." Before she could answer, a firm voice interrupted. "Is there a problem here?" It was Dr. Caldwell. The receptionist straightened immediately. "This man says he needs to see a doctor." "No appointment." Dr. Caldwell's expression didn't change. He glanced at Eli. A single calculating look, then crossed his arms. "Sir, this is a private hospital. We don't take walk-ins without insurance or identification." Eli swallowed hard. "Please, I can't breathe right. I've been feeling dizzy. I think it's serious," the doctor sighed. "There's a public hospital about 20 minutes away, County General. They handle free care. I suggest you go there." "I can't walk that far," Eli whispered, gripping the edge of the desk for balance. "Please, I just need to lie down." "It hurts." "Sir," Dr. Caldwell cut him off, his voice sharper now. "We can't treat you without proof of insurance. You'll have to leave before security gets involved." The words hung in the air like a slap. The room went quiet. People nearby watched, pretending not to, their curiosity battling with discomfort. Eli's shoulders sank. "I understand," he said softly. His voice cracked. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." He turned around, his old shoes squeaking against the clean floor. As he walked toward the exit, a nurse nearby hesitated, wanting to help, but afraid to disobey her superior. Dr. Caldwell exhaled and turned back to his papers, muttering, "Can't help everyone who walks in off the street." But someone else had heard him. Across the lobby, near the hospital's wall of donor plaques, stood a tall man in a gray suit. He had been there for several minutes, reading quietly, blending into the morning chaos. But his eyes had never left the front desk. His name was Mr. Graham. He watched the scene unfold. Every word, every expression, every flicker of pain in the homeless man's face. He saw the cold efficiency in Dr. Caldwell's tone, the indifference, the quiet humiliation. When Eli stumbled outside, clutching his chest, Mr. Graham's jaw tightened. He looked calm on the surface, but there was something sharp in his eyes, something that said this wasn't just another sad story to him. He turned slightly, watching as the security guard closed the glass door behind Eli. The reflection in the glass showed Dr. Caldwell walking away, shoulders straight, face unreadable. Mr. Graham didn't move. He simply whispered under his breath, "Interesting." He picked up his briefcase and headed toward the elevator, his expression thoughtful, almost calculating. His appointment with the hospital's board of directors was in less than an hour, and now he had something very specific to discuss. In the staff cafeteria, whispers spread faster than coffee refills. Two nurses sat at a corner table talking quietly. "Did you see that man this morning?" one asked. "The homeless guy?" "Yeah, poor thing looked like he was dying. Dr. Caldwell just sent him away." The other nurse frowned. "I get it, though. Hospital policy. But still, you could see it in his eyes. He just needed a little compassion." At the next table, Mr. Graham sat with a cup of black coffee, listening silently. He didn't interrupt. He didn't show any expression, but every word sank deep, like a needle stitching a plan together. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket and wrote a single line: "Compassion denied, in plain sight." Then his phone buzzed. A reminder flashed on the screen. "Meeting with hospital director, 11:30 a.m. He closed the notebook, slipped it back into his jacket, and took another sip of coffee. When he looked up, he saw Dr. Caldwell enter the cafeteria, greeting a colleague with a smile. The same man who, an hour ago, had told someone to leave and die elsewhere. Mr. Graham's lips curved into a faint smile, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile that hides purpose. Outside the hospital, the sun was already higher, glaring off car roofs and glass windows. The streets were alive with sound, but Eli was gone. The security camera above the door caught a glimpse of him walking down the sidewalk, one hand pressed to his chest, disappearing into the morning crowd. Inside, life went on as usual. Patients were checked in, charts updated, lunch orders placed. No one spoke of the man who had asked for help. In his office, Dr. Caldwell sat behind his desk, flipping through medical reports. His mind was already on the next surgery, the next deadline, the next paycheck. The moment in the lobby had already faded. He leaned back, rubbing his temples, unaware that someone powerful, had been watching him closely. Down the hall, Mr. Graham stood near the large hospital directory, talking softly to the director's assistant. His voice was calm, polite, but deliberate. "I'm here for the meeting," he said. "Of course, Mr. Graham," the assistant replied. "Right this way." As they walked, his gaze passed over the bustling lobby one more time, the same desk where Eli had pleaded for help just an hour earlier. His eyes lingered, then turned away. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. He stepped inside, straightened his tie, and said quietly to himself, "Sometimes the smallest moments reveal everything." The doors closed, and with that quiet sound, the first thread of a much larger story began to pull tight. A story of pride, compassion, and a lesson that was about to change more than one life. The lobby of Riverside General returned to its routine rhythm. The way water flattens after a stone sinks. The receptionist tapped lightly at her keyboard. A baby cried in a stroller. A cart of fresh linens rolled by with a soft squeak, leaving behind the loose scent of cotton and bleach. But for Mr. Graham, the air still held the echo of refusal. He remained near the donor plaques, hands resting on a slim leather briefcase. In the polished brass, he could see a faint reflection of himself. Gray suit fitted perfectly, tie the shade of midnight before rain. He adjusted nothing. The image pleased him in a practical way. Composed, forgettable, unremarkable. He preferred it that way. People show their true selves when they don't feel watched. His eyes slid back to the sliding doors. The street outside was awash of light. Eli had vanished into it like a chalk line brushed away. The security guard leaned his elbow on the podium and scrolled his phone, face blank, like nothing had happened at all. From the far corridor, Dr. Thomas Caldwell strode past with long, unhurried steps. He glanced at his watch, handed a chart to a nurse, and offered a neat half-smile to someone who thanked him. The morning incident had already been filed in his mind under policy, a cold drawer that clicked shut without effort. Mr. Graham watched the doctor disappear into the elevator. The doors swallowed him with a hush. "Policy," he murmured, almost to himself. How polite the word sounds when used to cover a wound. He turned his focus to the wall of names again. The plaques gleamed, bronze for the modest, silver for the serious, gold for the names everyone knew. He ran a finger along the bevel of one old engraving and thought about the bargain these walls represented, how gratitude could be framed, how responsibility could be measured by the inch. He took out a small notebook and wrote a single line in tidy print. A hospital shows its soul in its lobby. Then he underlined it once and slipped the notebook back into his inside pocket. Upstairs, Dr. Caldwell washed his hands as the water ran hot and loud. The sound filled the tiny space and left no room for second thoughts. He liked how the heat cleared the chill of the corridors, how the mirror gave back a face he could trust. Steady eyes, clean jawline, the look of a man educated by hard lessons. He dried off, straightened his coat, and rejoined the day. Rounds were familiar, a choreography of doors and voices. A woman with an untamed cough, a teenager who rolled his eyes but still asked if the stitches would scar, an elderly man who wanted to negotiate with his blood pressure monitor like it were a stubborn old friend. Caldwell's tone was clipped but not cruel, efficient, cool, professional. When a nurse from downstairs crossed paths with him between rooms, she hesitated and said softly, "Doctor." "About the man in the lobby." "Handled," Caldwell said without breaking stride. "Send security the incident note. County General can process him." She nodded, but her eyes lingered a heartbeat too long. There was a question in them, not medical, but human. Caldwell didn't look up to catch it. He moved on. In the elevator, he pressed the button for administration, then changed his mind, pressing lobby instead. He felt the whisper of doubt and told himself it was fatigue. The door opened to the familiar hum. He stepped out, glanced around, and saw only the usual. In the glass, he found his reflection. In the reflection, he found order again. He checked his watch and walked toward the cafeteria. Mr. Graham sat alone at a small table, the kind with edges rounded so no one would bruise themselves in passing. He liked that detail. Someone in procurement had thought about corners. Corners mattered. He had ordered coffee and ignored it until it cooled to a tolerable honesty. Heat hides flavor, he believed. He preferred things unhidden. His briefcase sat against his calf. He did not open it. He already knew what it contained. A portfolio is not a secret. It is an intention wrapped in paperwork. Around him, conversations rose and fell. The cafeteria language was a blend of acronyms and human shorthand. Codes for pain, humor as antiseptic, laughter restrained to the polite edge of exhaustion. Through it all, he sat very still, watching people without making any of them feel observed. Every few minutes, his gaze drifted to the hall where the lobby began. He hoped, irrationally, he scolded himself, to see the man return. It is tempting to expect stories to circle back quickly, to offer easy second chances. But life seldom edits itself so neatly. He knew this from experience. Mr. Graham took a small silver coin from his pocket and turned it between his fingers, a reflex that looked like idleness, but never was. One side of the coin bore a star, the other a faded number. It was not valuable, only weighted with meaning, the kind of thing a person keeps when they've promised to remember. His phone vibrated. A quiet reminder bloomed across the screen. 11:30, Director Thompson. He placed the coin back in his pocket, stood, and left the cafeteria with a pace so even it looked like the hallway had been laid down for his footsteps. Administration smelled less like medicine and more like paperwork, toner, carpet cleaner, the faint sweetness of coffee that had learned to sit and behave. A woman at the front desk looked up from her calendar and brightened. "Mr. Graham?" "Good morning. You're right on time." "Thank you," he said, smiling with the practiced warmth of someone who was used to being welcomed. "I won't keep you long. Director Thompson is ready for you." She stood to lead him down a corridor where glass offices glowed with lamplight. People inside typed with the focused silence of those who know decisions are made in this wing and presented as fate elsewhere. They reached a door with a small placard and a neat serif font. Eleanor Thompson, Executive Director. The assistant knocked twice and pushed the door open. "Mr. Graham is here." "Send him in," came a calm voice. Mr. Graham stepped through. Director Thompson stood to shake his hand. She had the presence of someone who had learned to thread compassion with budgets, a rare skill that leaves careful lines at the corners of the eyes. On her desk, a stack of reports sat in square harmony with a white ceramic mug that read, "Do the most good." The sentiment had survived several coffee rings. "Good to finally meet you," she said. "I've heard your name in every meeting for the last 2 months. I hope for the right reasons," Mr. Graham replied. His smile was small, disciplined. She gestured to a chair. "Please, I understand you wanted a tour of our emergency services. And you had questions about our community intake policy?" "I do," he said mildly. "I like to see the arteries of a hospital before speaking about its heart." She laughed, not sure if he was being poetic or specific. "Well, the ER is our busiest artery. We're proud of the outcomes, despite the pressure." "I saw some of that pressure in the lobby today," he said. He kept his tone soft, almost conversational. A man came in without identification. Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the professional equivalent of a flinch. "Security informed us. It's unfortunate," a pause. "But we have procedures." "Yes," he said. "Policy." The word circled the room and came back to sit between them. She folded her hands. "I want you to know we partner with County General and with shelters across the city. Our charity fund is finite and we have to protect our operations. There's a balance." "There is," he agreed. "And balance is a word people use when they are trying not to say cost." Her eyes sharpened. "Not unkind but alert now. Mr. Graham, may I ask a practical question?" She leaned forward. "Are you still considering the expansion grant?" He didn't answer directly. He rarely did. "I'm considering the shape of it," he said. "How far it ought to reach? Whom it ought to touch first?" She nodded slowly. "We're prepared to show you the data." "Data is a category," he said, polite as a closed book. "Stories are evidence." "Then we'll show you both," she said. She meant it. He respected that. He glanced at the window where the city unwound in strips of glass and trees. "If a hospital is a city's conscience, Ms. Thompson, then the lobby is the conscience speaking out loud." "And what did you hear today?" She asked. "A sentence composed of rules," he said evenly. "Flawless grammar. Wrong meaning." The director's face parted into something like fatigue, but not collapse. The expression administrators wear when the truth rings, and they must answer without discouraging the bell. "I'll look into the incident personally," she said. "And I'll speak with Dr. Caldwell." Mr. Graham tilted his head. "Yes, Dr. Caldwell." She latched onto the name. "He's one of our best, truly. Brilliant in the operating room. Efficient under pressure, I'm sure," he said. "The most difficult place to bring mercy is the place where time is short." The room held a brief, productive hush. Then she said, "Would you like to meet him?" "Not yet," he said. "I prefer to see people as they are before they've prepared to be seen." They discussed budgets, geographic catchment, readmission rates, the architecture of healthcare spoken in numbers. Mr. Graham listened carefully, asked questions that unfurled slowly like measuring tape. He didn't rush. Quiet curiosity, he knew, revealed more than bold interrogation. People fill silence with honesty. At one point, Director Thompson asked if his foundation had finalized the gift amount. He opened his briefcase, revealed nothing of substance, just a single crisp folder with a neutral cover page, and then closed it again. "We are committed to a significant investment," he said. "But significance should not be confused with size." "What should it be confused with?" she asked, amused in spite of herself. "Direction," he said simply. "Money is water. It matters where it flows." The assistant tapped softly on the door and slipped in with 2 paper cups. "Fresh coffee," she said, setting them down. On the napkin beneath Mr. Graham's cup, a tiny printed slogan read, "People first." He noticed it without comment, then placed his cup carefully so the words were visible, as if staging a photograph no one would take. He asked about the hospital's outreach, particularly whether the ER coordinated with shelters or veteran clinics. The question was neutral in tone, but it had a compass inside it. "Yes," Director Thompson said. "We have a quarterly clinic at St. Luke's, and our social work team partners with 3 shelters. Veterans specifically, that's trickier. Funding is inconsistent." "I see," he said, and his hand drifted to his pocket, tapping once against the outline of the coin. "Inconsistency makes dignity a variable. That bothers me." She studied him, then ventured something cautious. "You speak like someone for whom this isn't theoretical." Most important things aren't, he said. Before he left, they agreed on a tour, not the polished kind. He asked to see intake without announcement, to watch triage, to stand by the double doors and listen to the noise a life makes when it arrives without paperwork. Director Thompson considered the request and then agreed. Tomorrow morning, she said. Early, we'll keep it discreet. Thank you, he said, and meant it. As they shook hands, he added, I'll also need to review your discretionary policies, where exceptions are made and by whom. I'm interested in the integrity of judgment as much as the rule of it. Her mouth curved into that administrative almost smile again. You ask like a board member. He returned the almost smile with one of his own. Titles are ornamental, Ms. Thompson. Influence is structural. Something in her eyes shifted. Not fear, not relief. Recognition. She understood he was not merely a donor with a checkbook. He was a lever with a fulcrum placed somewhere she could not yet see. Very well, she said. I'll prepare the documents. Don't prepare too much, he said gently. I have an affection for unvarnished truth. Back in the lobby, he paused again at the sliding glass doors. The day had matured into the kind of brightness that washes away detail. People flowed in and out. A man with daisies in a grocery vase. A teenager with a skateboard tucked awkwardly under his arm. A mother holding a hand that resisted without really pulling. Mr. Graham put his hand in his pocket and felt the coin, cool as water in shade. He closed his fingers around it and looked down the street in the direction Eli had gone. He imagined a map only he could see. The hospital at its center. Streets branching like veins, shelters like small, stubborn hearts beating wherever they could. Somewhere along those streets, a man with a worn backpack moved in shallow breaths, carrying a pain that should not have been carried alone. Mr. Graham lifted his briefcase, squared his shoulders, and left the building. Behind him, Dr. Caldwell stepped into the lobby from the cafeteria corridor. Gaze fixed on the next task, expression composed. The two men passed within a dozen paces of each other, never meeting eyes. It was a near miss that would not last. Outside, the city sounded like it always did at noon. Impatient, competent, unaware of itself. Mr. Graham walked away with that same even pace, the kind that keeps its own time. He did not look powerful. He did not need to. There are people whose strength announces itself with noise, and there are people whose strength arranges the room without moving a chair. Mr. Graham was the second kind. Tomorrow, he would stand where the ambulances unload. He would listen to the sound a policy makes when it hits a real life. And when he spoke next, the hospital would understand that the man who watched from the lobby wall of plaques wasn't merely watching. He was deciding. Long before his name hung on the hospital's wall, Thomas Caldwell was just another young man in a white coat with eyes full of belief. He had grown up in a small town, the son of a teacher and a mechanic. His mother taught him that kindness was a form of intelligence. His father, a man with grease-stained hands, used to say, "If you can fix something broken, you owe it to the world to do it." Thomas carried that philosophy into medicine. At college, he volunteered at free clinics, patching up cuts and cleaning wounds on people who couldn't afford a visit anywhere else. He never saw rich or poor. He saw pain and believed healing was his purpose. One night during residency, he stayed past midnight with a patient everyone else had given up on, a homeless woman named Marlene. She had severe pneumonia and no family. He monitored her through the night, sitting by her bed while rain hammered the windows. When she finally opened her eyes and whispered, "You stayed," he smiled softly and said, "That's what we do." That night, he promised himself something sacred. He would never turn anyone away, no matter who they were. But promises made in youth are easy to make and harder to keep. Years passed. The idealism that once fueled him became harder to protect. Riverside General was his dream job, a place of shining halls, the hum of progress, the scent of order. But it came with rules, policies, insurance codes, deadlines, and pressure. At first, Dr. Caldwell ignored them. He found ways to help patients who couldn't pay. Small things, quiet things. He paid for medications out of pocket. He signed extra forms to cover uninsured patients under other departments. It worked, for a while, until one afternoon an administrator called him in. "Thomas, you've overridden 6 insurance protocols this month. We can't keep doing this." "They needed help," he said simply. "I understand. But the hospital runs on more than goodwill." He left the meeting with a knot in his chest. The system wasn't built for the compassion he wanted to give. Every time he bent the rules, someone reminded him that hospitals were also businesses, machines fueled by bills and signatures, and slowly, that machine began to wear him down. He started sleeping less. He skipped meals. He smiled less often. The idealist became a perfectionist, someone who hid his exhaustion behind crisp professionalism. One night, walking home through the parking lot, he caught himself thinking, maybe you can't save everyone. It was the first time that thought felt more like acceptance than defeat. Her name was Lydia Parks, a name that would echo in his memory for years. She was young, 25 maybe, with a broken wrist and bruises she said came from falling downstairs. Dr. Caldwell didn't ask questions. He just helped. He treated her for free, slipping her name under a charity program that didn't technically apply. She thanked him through tears, calling him an angel. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from the hospital's billing office. Lydia had used his personal name to file for prescription drugs under his credentials. Dozens of fraudulent orders appeared in his ID's record. The hospital board called an inquiry. The administration nearly suspended him. His colleagues whispered in hallways. When they confronted Lydia, she admitted it, crying, apologizing, saying she didn't mean harm. Caldwell felt something cold take root in him that day. He didn't just lose trust in her. He lost trust in the part of himself that wanted to believe. People were always good, he told the board. It won't happen again. And for the first time, he meant it differently. Something inside him closed, quietly, permanently. From then on, his kindness became cautious. His compassion required proof. His heart became a room with a lock on the door. Medicine, for all its nobility, has an unspoken cost. It asks more of the soul than it gives back. Years later, Dr. Caldwell found himself drowning in long shifts and quiet guilt. His friends moved on, got married, built lives beyond hospital walls. He stayed behind, chasing precision, control, and maybe redemption. He had debts from medical school and an aging mother in assisted care. His father had passed away before ever seeing his son become the doctor he dreamed of. Every month, the bills reminded him that good intentions didn't pay the rent. He worked overtime, filled extra shifts, climbed the hierarchy. The hospital rewarded him. Plaques, promotions, praise, but none of it filled the emptiness. He'd been pretending wasn't there. He told himself. He was doing it for efficiency. That treating paying patients first kept the hospital alive for everyone else. But deep down, he knew it wasn't about efficiency anymore. It was about control, about building a wall between himself and disappointment. The more the world disappointed him, the thicker the wall became. And on the other side of that wall, compassion began to fade like light through tinted glass. By the time Eli, the homeless man, walked into the hospital that morning, Dr. Caldwell had long buried the young man who once believed in healing the world. He was successful, respected, and utterly disconnected. He measured worth by orderliness. He valued quiet hallways over messy emotions. He believed systems worked best when they weren't slowed down by exceptions. To him, helping someone like Eli felt like breaking a rule that no one would thank him for. And so he didn't. He told himself the same lie the system had taught him. If you can't help everyone, you shouldn't help anyone outside the rules. But that morning, as Eli's frail voice pleaded and his hands trembled against the desk, something old stirred beneath the surface. A whisper, a flicker, a ghost of the doctor he used to be. He ignored it, drowned it out with procedure, and walked away. But even as he returned to his rounds, he couldn't quite shake the feeling that something about that moment had followed him. A faint echo in his chest, like a memory knocking on a door he'd locked long ago. That night, long after the hospital had gone quiet, Dr. Caldwell sat in his office, the city lights blinking through the window. The sound of his pen tapping the desk was the only heartbeat in the room. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. himself in residency, smiling beside two other young doctors. Behind them, a banner read, "To heal, not judge." He stared at the photo for a long time. The faces were full of light, untouched by disappointment. He tried to remember what that felt like. He couldn't. Somewhere between saving lives and meeting quotas, he had forgotten why he began this journey in the first place. He rubbed his temples and whispered to the empty room. "You can't help everyone." The words felt hollow now, like an excuse pretending to be wisdom. He placed the photo face down on his desk. Outside, the city hummed, and in a shelter not far away, a man named Eli tried to sleep through another night of coughing. Their paths, unknown to both of them, were circling back toward each other, and as the clock ticked past midnight, a line of narration seemed to write itself in the stillness. But fate has a way of testing the lessons we forget. The camera would fade out slowly, lingering on the photograph, the fluorescent lights humming above, and the quiet, tired face of a man who once believed healing was sacred. And would soon learn it again. Morning sunlight filtered through the glass atrium of Riverside General, soft but sharp enough to make everyone move faster. It wasn't just another day. An email had arrived before sunrise. Subject: major donor visit. Confidential. That single line had electrified the hospital. The staff whispered. The janitors polished. The administrators straightened everything twice. Every department knew what was at stake. This visit could mean funding, equipment, expansion, maybe even job security. No one knew the donor's name, only that they were important. The rumor mill painted them as a tech investor, a retired surgeon, a philanthropist with deep pockets. By 9 a.m., the hospital felt like a stage before the curtain lifted. In the ER, Dr. Caldwell reviewed patient charts, outwardly calm but aware of the subtle shift around him. The staff was unusually alert. Even the nurses spoke in softer tones. He skimmed the email again and sighed. "Another performance," he muttered. "Let's hope it ends quickly." But beneath the surface, something uneasy stirred, the faint echo of yesterday. When he'd turned away, the man at the door. At 10 a.m., the hospital hummed with a quiet, nervous rhythm. The floors gleamed, the front desk looked immaculate, and the receptionist rehearsed her greeting for the 5th time. In her office, Director Eleanor Thompson checked her watch for the 3rd time. She looked composed, though her heart raced. The board had been chasing this donation for months, a partnership that could secure the hospital's future. She had one chance to impress. "Everyone ready?" she asked her assistant. "Yes, ma'am," the young woman replied. "The visitor should be here any minute." Thompson smiled, straightened her blazer, and walked toward the lobby. As she stepped into the open space, the automatic doors whispered apart, and the visitor appeared. A tall man in a slate-gray suit entered with quiet confidence. No entourage, no media, just presence. He nodded once to the security guard and crossed the floor with deliberate grace. "Mr. Graham," Director Thompson said warmly. "Welcome to Riverside General." He returned the greeting with a measured smile. "Thank you, Director. I appreciate your time." If anyone noticed that he glanced briefly, almost instinctively, at the front desk, they didn't mention it. But in that moment, his eyes lingered on the exact spot where a homeless man had stood just 24 hours earlier. The entourage formed naturally. The director, her assistant, the operations lead, and a few senior physicians. Dr. Caldwell joined at the last moment, summoned to represent the emergency department. He stepped into the group, greeted the visitor with a professional nod, and froze for half a second. It was him, the man from the lobby, the quiet observer from yesterday. But now he wasn't just another bystander. His tailored suit, his briefcase, his calm authority, everything about him radiated influence. "Dr. Caldwell," the director said cheerfully. "This is Mr. Graham, one of our prospective partners." Caldwell's pulse flickered. "Of course," he said, extending his hand. Mr. Graham shook it gently, his gaze unreadable. "Doctor," he replied with polite restraint. Then the tour began. They moved through pediatrics, the rehab wing, and the surgical suites. Everywhere they went, the air felt polished, rehearsed. Staff smiled, machines hummed, charts looked perfect. Mr. Graham asked quiet questions about patient care, community programs, staffing shortages. His tone remained calm, thoughtful, unthreatening, yet every question seemed to dig just beneath the surface. When they reached the administrative wing, he paused by a window overlooking the parking lot. "Does this hospital serve everyone in the district?" he asked. "Yes," Director Thompson said quickly. "Regardless of background or status." He nodded, looking back toward the lobby. "That's good to know," he said softly. "Very good." After the scheduled stops, Mr. Graham asked a question that froze the group. "I'd like to see the emergency department," he said. The director blinked. "The ER, it's a bit chaotic right now. I prefer things unfiltered," he said simply. "That's where a hospital's heart truly beats, isn't it?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Of course." "This way." The elevator descended slowly. The group's chatter faded. When the doors opened, the sound of the ER rushed in. Overlapping voices, monitors beeping, the restless hum of real life. Dr. Caldwell led them through triage, explaining the flow. Patients are assessed within minutes. Emergencies go directly to treatment bays. Others are referred as appropriate. Mr. Graham followed, hands behind his back, eyes scanning every detail. The scuffed linoleum, the flickering light over the intake desk, the exhausted faces of nurses juggling crises. They passed a child with a bandaged knee, a woman clutching her stomach, a young man whispering prayers under his breath. It was ordinary chaos, but to Mr. Graham, it was a mirror. He slowed his pace until he stopped entirely. They were standing in the exact same spot where Eli had pleaded for help the day before. The group turned, expecting him to continue. But Mr. Graham stood still, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Something wrong, sir?" the director asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he touched the corner of the reception desk, as though tracing an invisible line only he could see. The staff exchanged uneasy glances. The air grew heavy. Finally, he turned toward Dr. Caldwell. "Doctor," he said, his tone even but unmistakably sharp, "how do you decide who deserves your attention first?" Caldwell straightened. "We prioritize emergencies based on medical urgency. And if someone doesn't look like an emergency, then we refer them appropriately," he replied. "Our resources are limited, but we try to guide them to the right care." "Appropriately," Mr. Graham repeated softly. He let the words sit there, a quiet accusation wrapped in civility. Then, almost absently, he added, "I saw a man here yesterday. He didn't seem to meet your definition of appropriate?" The director blinked. "Yesterday?" "Yes," he said. "A homeless man. He was in distress." His eyes locked on Caldwell's. "You told him to leave." The color drained slightly from Caldwell's face. "You were here?" "I was," Mr. Graham said simply. "Standing right over there." The ER seemed to grow quieter, or maybe the silence between them just drowned everything else out. Even the monitors seemed to hold their beeps. "I remember him," Caldwell said after a long pause. "He didn't have identification. There were protocols." "Protocols," Mr. Graham echoed. "Always protocols." Director Thompson looked from one man to the other, realizing something she hadn't before. This wasn't just a donor's curiosity. This was personal. Mr. Graham's voice lowered. "That man you turned away, do you know his name?" "No," Caldwell said carefully. Mr. Graham's eyes darkened, the first flicker of emotion breaking through his calm. "His name is Eli." The sound of it hit like a quiet thunderclap. Caldwell blinked. "You know him?" "Yes," Mr. Graham said. "He's my brother." The words hung heavy in the air. Every face in the group froze. Even the busy ER seemed to still, caught in a pause between heartbeats. Caldwell's throat went dry. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was no policy for this. No page in any manual that told him what to say when the past walked into the present wearing a gray suit. Mr. Graham took a slow step closer. His voice was soft now, but unrelenting. "I watched him leave this place gasping for air while people turned away. And you—" His gaze sharpened. "You called it protocol." Caldwell's hands tightened behind his back. His pulse pounded in his ears. Mr. Graham looked down at the desk once more, the invisible spot where compassion had been denied, and then met the doctor's eyes. He spoke the final line quietly, almost like an echo of judgment and memory intertwined. "You don't remember him, do you?" And with that single question, The air fractured, curiosity and dread filling the space between them, as fate prepared its next test. The air in the ER felt thinner now, as if someone had quietly pulled the oxygen out of the room. Every sound faded into the distance, the beeping monitors, the rolling carts, the hum of fluorescent lights. Only two men existed in that moment, Mr. Graham and Dr. Caldwell, facing each other across a memory neither could escape. "Your brother?" Caldwell finally managed to whisper. His voice sounded foreign, smaller than it had ever been. Mr. Graham nodded slowly. "Yes, Eli Graham." He took a breath, his composure steady but his eyes burning with something that had nothing to do with anger. It was sorrow. "He's a veteran. A medic, actually. He saved lives overseas while the world forgot his name." Caldwell's chest tightened. He saw flashes in his mind. Eli's trembling hands, the way he had clutched his backpack, the pain in his voice when he'd said, "Please, I just need help." He had looked at that man and seen nothing but trouble. Now he saw something entirely different, a healer who had once been him. Mr. Graham continued, his tone quiet but cutting. "He served in 2 tours, helped civilians under fire. After the war, he came back with nothing. PTSD, shrapnel scars, nightmares that never ended. He volunteered at clinics until his health broke. Until the system forgot him too." He looked toward the desk again. "Yesterday I watched him beg for help. The same hands that once stopped bleeding on battlefields were shaking here. And you turned him away." Caldwell swallowed hard, guilt rising like a tide. I didn't know," he said softly. "If I had—" Mr. Graham cut him off gently. "That's the point, Doctor. You didn't ask." The words landed heavier than accusation. They were truth dressed as mercy. Caldwell's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to explain, to justify himself with policies and procedures, but all of it sounded hollow now. "I thought I was protecting order," Caldwell murmured, almost to himself. "I thought rules kept things fair." "Rules," Graham said, his voice barely above a whisper, "are meant to guide compassion, not replace it." For a long, painful second, neither man spoke. The hum of the ER filled the silence like an unanswered prayer. Mr. Graham straightened, every motion precise, controlled. "I came here today to finalize a donation," he said. "A substantial one. Enough to expand your trauma center, fund scholarships, rebuild wings that need it." Caldwell's eyes flickered with realization and regret. "But now," Graham continued, "I wonder if this place remembers what medicine was meant to be, or if it's just another machine that measures worth in paperwork." He paused, his gaze softening just slightly. "I'm not here for revenge, Doctor. I'm here to see if redemption still exists in places like this, and in people like you." Caldwell looked down, the weight of shame pressing on his chest. For the first time in years, he felt small, not because someone humbled him, but because he realized how far he'd drifted from the man he used to be. When he finally looked up, his voice cracked. "Where is he now?" Mr. Graham studied him for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, "That's for you to find out." He turned, picked up his briefcase and walked away, leaving behind not judgment, but an opening. As the doors closed behind him, Dr. Caldwell stood frozen, the echo of his own conscience whispering through the room. "You don't remember him, do you?" And this time, he wished more than anything that he had. The city looked different to Dr. Caldwell now. It wasn't the skyline or the traffic. It was the way people moved, how each face carried a story he had never taken the time to see. For 2 days, he searched for Eli. He called clinics, asked at shelters, even checked County General. No one had seen him. Finally, one cold morning, he followed a tip from a nurse who volunteered part-time at a downtown shelter. "Try the Haven Center," she said. "A lot of veterans go there." When Caldwell arrived, the smell of coffee and worn blankets met him at the door. The place was quiet. A few men huddled near a heater, a woman humming softly as she folded clothes. The air was heavy but kind, and then, in a corner near a faded mural of a sunrise, he saw him. Eli sat with his backpack beside him, sketching something on a scrap of paper. Maybe a memory, maybe a dream. Caldwell approached slowly, his heartbeat loud in his ears. "Eli," he said quietly, The man looked up, recognition flickering behind tired eyes. "Doctor," he murmured. His voice was cautious but calm. "I came to say I'm sorry," Caldwell said, "for what I did. For what I didn't do." Eli studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You didn't have to come here." "I did," Caldwell replied. "Because I was wrong." He sat beside him, the air thick with unspoken truth. "I've treated hundreds of patients," Caldwell continued. "But that day I forgot why I became a doctor. I forgot that healing isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs it." Eli looked down at his sketch, a rough drawing of hands reaching toward one another. "We all forget sometimes," he said. "What matters is what we do after." Caldwell's eyes stung. "Then let me do something now. Let me help you." Over the next several days, Caldwell kept his word. He examined Eli at the shelter's small clinic, treated his infection, and arranged for his transfer to Riverside's care. But he didn't stop there. He began spending hours at the shelter, helping, listening, learning. He saw people he used to pass by without a second thought. Veterans, mothers, men who once wore suits. Each story softened him. Each conversation stitched back the part of him he had long ignored. At night, he would drive home in silence, the city lights reflecting off the small plastic bracelet around his wrist, Eli's old hospital band, the one he'd replaced with a new one. It wasn't decoration. It was a promise, a reminder of the man he had failed, and the man he was becoming again. Weeks passed. Eli's health improved. He smiled more. So did Caldwell. One evening, as the doctor packed up after volunteering, Eli said quietly, "You didn't just heal me. Doc, you found yourself again." Caldwell looked at him and smiled. Small, genuine, unguarded. "Maybe," he said. "But I think you showed me how." Outside, the sun dipped low over the city. Warm, forgiving, endless. And for the first time in years, Dr. Caldwell walked away, not as a man haunted by guilt, but as a man who had remembered what it meant to care. The camera lingers on the hospital after dark. The hallways are quiet now, the kind of quiet that hums with life just beneath the surface. A janitor wipes down a counter. A nurse hums to herself as she files reports. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughs faintly in recovery. The world hasn't changed in any grand cinematic way, but something has shifted, small, invisible, yet powerful. 'Cause sometimes transformation doesn't roar, it whispers. What happened inside that hospital wasn't just about one man's mistake or another man's forgiveness. It was about the simple, fragile thread that connects us, the understanding that compassion, once broken, can still be repaired. Dr. Caldwell found that thread again in the most unexpected place, inside the same man he once refused to help. And that act, a single moment of humility, began a ripple that moved through hallways and hearts, through nurses who started asking one more question instead of assuming, through administrators who began revisiting old policies with fresh eyes, through patients who walked in afraid and walked out seen, because kindness has a strange kind of echo. It never really ends where it starts. How many people do we walk past each day without ever truly seeing them? How many stories remain unheard because we decided too soon who someone was? Eli was a man the world had stopped looking at. A veteran, a healer, a human being reduced to a shadow by circumstance. Dr. Caldwell had all the power, all the skill, all the knowledge, yet it was Eli who reminded him what healing actually means. And maybe that's the quiet truth buried inside this story. Sometimes, the people who seem to have nothing left are the ones who hold the lessons we've forgotten. In the closing montage, the camera drifts through the shelter where Eli now volunteers. He's laughing with another veteran, handing out warm meals, sketching little drawings for the kids who visit with their parents. Then, a slow cut to Dr. Caldwell, standing by the ER desk, listening intently to a nervous patient. He smiles gently, offers a reassuring nod, and guides them in without hesitation. The bracelet on his wrist catches the light, a small circle of plastic, weathered but unbroken. That bracelet isn't just a reminder of guilt. It's a symbol of grace, of what happens when empathy replaces indifference. It's proof that a second chance, when given, can rebuild something much larger than one life. Every day, We make choices about who we notice and who we turn away from. Sometimes we mistake struggle for weakness. Sometimes we confuse pride for worth. But every person carries a story, a weight, a reason, a hope. The screen shows the reflection of city lights on the hospital windows, blending with the faint glow of dawn. Maybe we can't change the whole world, the voice continues, but we can change the moment right in front of us. Because compassion, when practiced, doesn't just heal others, it heals us too. The music swells softly in a blend of piano and cello, warm and forgiving. The camera fades back to the same glass doors from the very beginning, the doors where Eli once stood, where Dr. Caldwell once looked away. Now those doors open again. A nurse helps an older man inside, steadying his arm. There's no hesitation, no question, just care. In the end, it isn't power or position that defines us. It's compassion, and in a world that often looks away. Sometimes, the biggest miracles begin with a second glance.